Well, Warriors, quite a day we have after the CPI gave people that had hope. There's an old expression, if you're hoping, it's hopeless. And I'm here with Erin Swinlin at Decision Point. You can find her on Twitter at _ Decision Point. She's been working with her father, Carl, at Decision Point for quite some time. Erin, thank you so much for joining me today on a pretty disappointing day for people that were hoping for a little relief from the Fed. Appreciate you being at TradeGateHub.com with us.
No problem. I'm sorry that things aren't looking so good today.
Well, it depends what side of the market you're on, and one thing I could say, I'm actually, there is some hope because I think there's a chance for a dollar peak in here, and I think that would give the market a little relief should that happen. But last time we were together, and that's why I wanted to show this chart, we were trading in this area and holding this trend line, and you said you really couldn't find things that qualified, that you wait for a lot of confirmation to get long things, and we just had this temporary little rally, kind of like what we had last week. And you're right to be negative, and there really wasn't anything but a trade there, not a position. You were out before the breakdown, and now we're down here.
Yes.
And there are a lot of people talking about that we could go back to the COVID pre-high, the high before COVID, like 3,100 or so. But I thought it might be appropriate, since people have been talking about we haven't had that climactic sell-off here, that you do climax analysis, and maybe you could take us through that process, and perhaps we're getting closer on certain groups to having had that selling climax. So I'm going to stop sharing here. And
Mhm.
if you recall on Zoom, you just go to the bottom of the
All
screen
right.
and it's a green
Excellent.
button. So are we getting close to climax sell-offs, capitulations, the two C words in
Yeah,
your view, and what you look for?
right. Let's see if I can make this a little bit bigger for your audience here. Looks like not.
Okay, we
Okay.
can see it.
Okay, excellent. All right. So, what I look for in what we call that climax analysis is really I'm looking for those really forceful moves, not necessarily in the amount of the move, but more what was going on below the surface. So, this is our climax indicator chart. And what we follow are of course, SPX total volume. We look at obviously, we look at the VIX, and the main thing, though, that most people don't use, and that is the volume ratios. And what we find is that when we get those really lopsided volume ratios, that they generally will happen right around an inflection point or a pivot point. And, we've been finding that we're getting a lot of these climactic moves based on the volume ratios, based on the net advance declines, the net advance decline volume, because you want to see those really high readings on both of those indicators as well. So, we've been wandering here through all of these climax days. Now, I will tell you that typically you don't see this kind of movement or action on this chart, but it has been just, dizzying, as I'm sure your audience is probably familiar with as far as this particular market is
Okay.
going.
So with having these multiple indicators, or at least that you've had quite a few selling climaxes, even though prices have continued to move down, and that's unusual. Is that what has lured people into the long side? Is that they thought they had it? Because I know a lot of old school guys are saying, yeah, we need a 40 or 50 reading in the VIX to know that we have some type of capitulation, maybe even higher. And I'm not sure what the VIX is doing today, but it's been so muted, Erin. Um, is the VIX one of the only things that has not flashed climax to you?
When we get these little arrow, you can see the arrows here. We
Yeah,
use an inverted scale. Let me see if I can get one that's just a little bit bigger. So we invert our VIX, and I'm going to just
right.
bring right through there because we think oversold should be on the bottom, overbought on the top. And so when we get those punctures of those bands
Yeah.
alongside those climactic readings, those are generally giving us that flash that either we have an upside climax or a downside climax. And, you can get a downside exhaustion. It doesn't have to necessarily be an up day to get a climax day. But yeah, the big problem here is that we're getting too many. And the ones that are working out are the downside initiations or the upside exhaustions. So I still think
Okay.
that there's more time to move down. I mean, the
Okay.
climax analysis is helpful for possible pivot points, and it's really great for the short term. But when you're talking about long-term numbers like we are, that's kind of a different ballgame. And I definitely believe that we have lower to go, unfortunately.
Okay. And are there any groups, or is it really the whole market? Are there any groups that have kind of already exhibited them? And I don't know. Let me be selfish and make a request for you to take a look at perhaps some individual issues that I like, and I don't know if you could apply your indicators to it, but
Certainly.
something like Endeavor Silver, or what's the other name of it? There's Endeavor, and there's a couple others that I'm involved in. Any of the miners, even though the miners are giving up a lot today, to me, it looks like gold could make a new low and silver could make a new low, and some of these miners would put in higher lows. So I was wondering if any of them qualified, even GDX. And there you go. That was fine.
Yeah,
The
so there's
Yeah,
actually have a way better chart of gold miners though. So I'm gonna, if you will
okay. That
indulge, I'm gonna.
SILJ is nice. I was wondering if you thought there was a climax there. Okay,
Right.
G. All right.
I'm not really seeing that. What I am, I don't have those underneath the surface kind of indicators for
Okay.
each specific issue, but I do cover a lot of this in our DP alert, and we do look at under the hood, as I like to call it, for gold miners. And I'm watching gold miners. I was really bullish coming out of this
Right.
low. Everything looked good. You
Yeah.
had great participation going on under the surface. I actually am holding out hope here for gold miners. This was a really bad open today with
Yeah.
that big gap down. But, when you still see a lot of the stocks in there with price above their 20-day EMAs and above their 50, despite having a really bad decline here on the second one down. So
Yeah.
I'm still looking for them to do well. Just because they're having this really difficult time here. It
Well,
is,
if we washed one more time and made marginal new lows, would that change a picture for you?
yeah, it probably would.
Okay. Okay.
Right now, this is a problem. My momentum is starting to shift to the downside here underneath the zero line. I
Okay.
mean, I was in gold miners. I told my subscribers I was in gold miners, and I felt terrible that after we peaked here, it just kept going down. But, you
Yeah.
know, everything was lined up. That's
Yeah.
what
It
I
sure
kept
looked
telling
like
them.
we had the turn there, didn't it?
Oh,
Yeah.
look at the
Yeah.
participation. I mean, it was
Yeah.
great.
So, any other groups that gave false signals, that, even though it might be a false signal, at least it was kind of showing a little bit of differentiation from the market, because uh, it's all one market. Whatever the dollar does, it seems, and yields, of course, seems
Right.
to drag the market around. Some people were looking at uranium stocks. Okay, let's talk about the dollar here,
Might as
because
well.
everyone's looking for a new high, Erin. Okay, and I know why they are, because if you look at the last high we had in UUP, it was a momentum confirmed it, and
Yes.
usually I don't go against that. and I'd be waiting for another high to sell into it. But I just think that it's so crowded here, and really, besides the initial reaction, cable's still up. Um, Euro's holding 78.6 back.
Mhm.
Aussie's getting near some of my low targets. Is there anything here that you see that could be ready to turn the dollar back to the downside?
Well,
And you could give
honestly,
me some hope.
yeah, I think I will give you some hope. Right now the indicators look fairly good. I'm not going to say they look great. I mean, my PMO's on a crossover buy signal, but notice how it's really flattened out. And
Yeah,
I don't like the way it's kind of curving here, looking a little toppy, right as we're getting ready to hit that overhead resistance. I
yeah,
mean, I'm not going to say it's not going to get higher, but I think that there are a lot of things set up on this chart. I even wrote about it last night that it's starting to look a little toppy. I really don't like the way it's acting. Look at the difference between when it came up here
yeah.
to what it's doing now. It's just sort of inching along, kind of tentative. So I could see a turn here at that overhead resistance. I
Okay,
mean, my
because
PMO is so flat. I mean, I just can't get excited about it. Look at the difference back here on the PMO.
right,
That's a momentum indicator, by
yeah,
the way.
okay. And your on balance volume was confirming that high.
Yes.
Almost everything was it gave us a confirmed high at that 114 level. So I was just curious, how about uh, the weakest markets? We had trouble with in the UK with gilts after tax plan by their prime minister. And I look at TLT and I look at the gilts, and they
Mhm.
don't look that much different to me. And they're calling it a crisis in the UK, probably because pension funds are, we don't know. Same thing,
Yeah.
strategy could be used by US pension funds here in the bond market. But I look at the bonds here and I just want to buy them,
Yeah,
you
I
know.
know they're still so low. The interest rate, I'm actually going to show my interest rate chart because I think that's more interesting. Actually, let's go to a longer term one. I had a lot of a subscriber tell me you're not looking at the 9-year chart. That's going to tell you I've got a longer term chart here. So we obviously broke out of that declining trend.
Yeah,
I do see interest rates, getting into this area, danger zone, if you want to call it, right around that
fives.
five,
Yeah,
6 area. I still think that I know it sounds crazy to a lot of people, but I still think that interest rates could see higher, move higher. And that's still going to put a lot of pressure, downside pressure on bonds. But I
okay,
will admit that they are also, we talked about the dollar looking toppy and the 30-year treasury yields in particular, starting to look really toppy here. All of these indicators, I'm sorry, all of these yields are starting to look really toppy. But at the same time, I look at the TLT chart and I get what you're saying. I really do,
yeah,
because it is so low, but I just see it going lower. I mean, I was thinking maybe it would be a rally coming in. We had those 2 days,
yeah,
that we've moved up. It kind of was looking a little bit more solid, but my PMO was still really not doing anything. I love stochastics because they really give you that really quick look. They're super sensitive and they really weren't doing anything either. And now we're still on that declining trend. And in fact, if you look at this, the declining trend is starting to increase.
okay.
So we're starting to see an even more acceleration to the downside right now.
Well,
I
maybe the
think,
Fed's going to have to come in and buy them,
yeah, I
like
think that
like the
that might help.
BOE, like the BOE. I mean, Paul's a smart guy. I mean, you look at the TLT, and we're talking sovereigns, and from where they were, you have a 30% hit to coupons. There's got to be massive repercussions in sovereigns, let alone for the government and what they're going to have to pay in interest expense, and the corporates, people having to roll over debt and the junk bond market. I just everyone says that they're going to keep going till it breaks, till something breaks. I think the bond market's broken.
Right. No, this is pretty crazy. I mean, again, when I look at that yield chart, it's just crazy. And, I do see, like I said, I had a couple subscribers write me and they're like, I don't know, you're a little too bullish on yields. And I'm not going to say that I'm super bullish on yields. I just, I like the way that they're turning over like this if you're a bond buyer,
Yeah.
but I just don't see it being ripe enough. I just don't. And we'll have to see what the repercussions are, from coming through, the global system here, Bank of England, like you said, buying bonds. And we could certainly see a switch, but it sure doesn't sound like the Fed is interested in doing anything remotely like that.
Yeah, I mean, I thought they might be interested, since it wouldn't be that difficult for them to do, is to have some type of concerted intervention in the dollar and help our allies out, help Japan out, help Europe, by coming in and having like an anti-Plaza Accord. But what I hear from Yellen and everyone, they all say there's no need for an accord. They know the
Mhm.
dollar's a wrecking ball, and
Right.
they just want to let it keep swinging, and breaking down emerging market economies with their dollar-denominated debt. They have to know what they're doing.
Hmm.
Uh, what are they waiting for, do you think, to break? And I'm not talking about turning and easing. I'm just talking about pausing or slowing
Right.
down their tightening, um, with what's happening in the financial markets. I think we're on the verge of not having financial stability in across the world, and
Mhm.
we won't be insulated from it.
Right. And I think that's, the concern of all of us, that this is all kind of crumbling, and here we stand, being part of the problem with the rising dollar. And I don't want to
Exacerbating it.
speak too much to this. This isn't
Politics.
something I study, but
Yeah.
I just, everybody's kind of following the Fed now. I mean, I think that they're going to eventually have to. I'm looking at the, early next year. I
Yeah.
mean, where we'll start to see, some easing as far as just even, stopping with this interest rate hiking. Um, I'm looking about early next year. I don't see it happening for another 3, 4, maybe 5, 6 months. I think we're still going to be on this. What's crazy is that they were really so much, they were firemen, they came in, put the fire out. John Malden used this particular analogy, and then they just stayed there. The building was fine. There was
Yeah.
no more fire anymore. They were rebuilding the building, and yet the firemen, the Fed, were still sitting out there, trying to put out a fire that we didn't even have. And now here we are in this mess on top of having the war. And now I think they're kind of trying to save face a little bit. They
Yeah.
have to show that they're, strong enough, and all of that. And, that I think is going to get us into trouble. And I think everybody's hoping for that inflation numbers start falling. I just don't see it, just, I'm living in California and our gas is over $6.
Yeah.
I just haven't seen any easing on, car prices. They don't include a lot of the energy, the housing costs, in the
Right.
CPI, but those are that's what affects the people the most.
Yeah.
We spend more money on our housing and mortgages and rent and food and, well, food, but and cars, and yet we really aren't paying attention to that. So, you know, I I don't know. It's very depressing. I'm often known as a perma bear, and I really wish I weren't so bearish on the market right now, but
Yeah.
man, I'll tell you, it's just not looking good. And I just don't see the relief out there. And I know traders keep grasping at straws here. We had 2 days of rally, and I will admit I was all on board. I'm like, oh yeah, bull
Last
market,
week.
bear
Yeah.
market rally last week.
Yeah.
The indicators were looking good. And then we had, the failure. And it's very frustrating. And I think we're just going to keep going through this. I was hoping to see some, a nice bear market rally. I mean, we can see rallies of, 30, 40, 50% and still be in, a bear market, and, it'll just turn back over. But we haven't really even gotten a lot of relief here, and we're overdue. And you would think that, if we can get some numbers to come in on inflation, maybe that are lower. I mean, we had that little move to the upside there for a while.
Yeah.
I
Well,
don't know, Dale. I
okay.
really,
All right. Well, let's maybe switch gears to when there are setups that you get buys on. Talk a little bit about what the life cycle of a decision point trade is
right,
like. So we're probably right now, there probably aren't many to initiate the beginning of their life. We're kind of in the death throes before there's rebirth, but
right,
we should prepare for when there is rebirth. What you guys look at for the life cycle of a trade, and I'm
certainly.
guessing the beginning is uh, brought on by short covering.
Right. And I'm really a technical analysis purist, for good or for bad. The things that we're looking for in the overall market are, our indicators that we came up with, our Swenlin trading oscillators. You can see that we get these lovely positive divergences right on into these lows. This is what fooled us this last time. We had some
Right.
great positive divergences, but we're not seeing that just yet. But I'm going to say, that when I see these Swinland trading oscillators still a little bit lower than they were at this low, I mean, that could turn into a longer term, positive divergence. So I think there's still some possibilities. As far as the life cycle of a trade, I'm looking for just some of the typical stuff. I'm actually going to share my diamonds. I do a stock picking newsletter basically. Yesterday was ETF day. So I will show you a little bit here if I can get my diamonds to come up properly. These were some of the ones I did earlier, but so these came out yesterday, and we were talking emerging markets.
Yeah.
I'm looking for things like, obviously unbalanced volume rising. I pay a lot of attention to the stochastics, but mainly my price momentum oscillator, which we came up with, is
Yeah.
a key to our life cycle of a decision point trade. So this is the inverse of emerging markets. And as you said, I mean, if we can get that dollar start moving lower, I just don't see it just yet. These are the kind of trades that I'm going to be looking for. And not the ultra short, the short on emerging markets, I think looked good yesterday. Unfortunately, it gapped up. I kind of hate that, because then my subscribers don't actually get that immediate entry.
Yeah.
But another one I'm looking at was food and beverage, the ETF. It's not doing well today, but we are looking at kind of this clustering double bottom kind of
Nice.
setup here. So I'm
Yeah.
liking that area. Food staples, I think, are looking pretty good right now. Not great. Nothing's looking great. I mean, what can we say here? It's kind of
Well,
rough.
you have more on now than you did a month or so ago when I talked to you.
Yes. Yes.
So, and that's with the market making new lows. So, that's interesting to me that the market's gotten worse
Mhm.
and you have more candidates than you had before the market got worse.
Well, it is fascinating, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, there's not a whole lot of candidates, don't get me wrong. I mean, there's still a lot of trouble out there. But you go through some of these industry groups, and they're starting to look okay. I mean, the food products, I'm looking at that one. You've still got a rising trend in it.
Yeah.
You've got the PMO buy signal. I mean, we talked last time, seriously, I could not find one
Right.
industry group with
That's what I
rising
mean.
momentum, not one. And now I'm seeing a lot of areas where we're getting a little bit of love.
Yeah.
And energy, I've been kind of paying attention to here, because I started to get a little bit bearish, but we were still holding a lot of support. Actually, I'm going to pull up, if we have time here, I'm going to pull up my oil chart here. Let's get in there. Oops, that's definitely not going to be the right one. Here we go. And, I think energy is going to start looking interesting here.
Yeah,
I saw some of those industry groups we were just looking at that were looking good.
looked a lot like the SILJ, that USO chart.
Yes, absolutely. So
Okay.
we're getting those pullbacks. We haven't quite lost anything.
Yeah,
I like the look here of energy. We already were starting to see a turn yesterday. Looks, really flaggish, as I call it, that bull flag
yeah,
setup.
yeah.
I like the look of this. And, again, energy is one of those areas going into the winter that, you usually kind of pay attention to, utilities as well. So, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. But I think energy is looking pretty good.
Okay.
Utilities, you know,
Yeah.
not good. I mean,
How
that's,
about, there is a little talk that there might be a passage of the SAFE Act
mhm,
during the lame duck. And there was some talk about just the decriminalization of changing the classification of cannabis. And they all had like 30-40% updates last week, or
yeah.
maybe it was this week, I can't remember. And now they're back at the lows. Any of your stuff that, are you monitoring this stuff to see if,
I
um,
absolutely am.
okay,
I
that,
mean, this area is so beat down. Let me throw
yeah,
a weekly chart up here.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, unbelievable. I am definitely watching this closely. I live in California. We're watching all these states start to legalize it.
yeah,
I think it's a brilliant idea. We need to start studying the medical, impacts of using marijuana and THC. CBD is now acceptable. I mean, I saw, CBD in Utah when I was through there.
yeah,
So I think that this is going to be a really interesting area. And when you see a move like that, just on kind of the rumor, if you
yeah.
will, that it'll happen, just imagine if we get this really to pass. I mean, this area is going to be absolutely going
Because
insane.
they can't write off anything. They have a business where they can't write off expenses.
Right, right.
Yeah,
It
it'll
was
change a whole accounting for them, and they'll get loans. They're not
mhm.
getting market rates on loans. There are so many disadvantages of it being a real business.
Right, right. I don't know if you're familiar with IIPR, Innovative Industrial Properties, but they work with the weed business
Growers.
for the dispensary.
Okay.
They give them sort of, I can't remember exactly how it works, so I'm not going to misspeak here, but they basically offer this opportunity for these dispensaries to come in and like rent the space
Yeah.
because they take on all of the risk. But this is one you want to pay attention to. I mean, the Mary Jane ETF and a lot of those stocks are going to be doing well. But I think this one's sort of on the outside looking in. It's going to be really
They're
interesting.
selling the picks and shovels. They're not the gold miners.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So
Okay.
this is that one's definitely something to keep an eye on. But like I said, you get a big move like this, 25-30% in a day on
Yeah.
this particular ETF. I mean, it's definitely near its lows, obviously. What does the monthly chart look like? Yeah, it's continues to make all-time lows. I mean, I
Yeah.
would say if we get a little bit of a turn here, this would probably be a really interesting, small play, just a
Yeah.
small bit of capital, sort of that lottery winning kind of play. I would give it a little bit more time
Yeah.
just to see where this is going to go politically. There's been some fits and starts as far as this goes. I know that this has been introduced quietly in the House prior. I mean, it had bipartisan support, and even then it didn't pass. So definitely kind of,
Yeah. If it's
tentative
going to
about
pass, it's got
this.
to pass during lame duck.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll pass after the election. So
Right. Well,
when
I
they
mean,
come,
it'll be,
maybe.
I don't know. I think it'll be interesting
I
to
mean,
see.
look, everyone needs tax revenue,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Anyway, really great talking to you, Erin. This was better than the first time, and some real interesting looks at your work and things that you pay attention to. Best way for people to get a hold of you and check out Decision Point.
Decisionpoint.com. That is where I sell my subscriptions. I do, if you like the overall market stuff, I have that in the DP alert. If you're a stock picker, I have the DP diamonds, and it has its own subscriber only trading room. So website needs to be built out a little bit, but if anybody's listening, watching, coupon code DP trial and then the number 2, that's going to get you 2 free weeks of any of our reports. So come and give them a try with the coupon code DP trial 2.
Thank you so much, Erin, and generous of you for people to check it out. Thank you for crystallizing a few things for me today.
Excellent. Yeah, we had
And
some great topics.
yeah, so really appreciate your giving spirit to edify the community here at TradeGate Hub, Erin.
All
Thanks
right.
very
Thank
much.
you. Thank
All
you.
right. Erin Swinland, everyone. You can follow her on Twitter at _decision point. And I'll make a point that she should be part of your intelligence gathering. Thank you, Erin.
Thank you.
All right. Talk to you.